Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 27 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined tonight by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Like I always say, it's always better to do these review shows after a win. And right now, I feel like this is probably the best that we will have felt about the Eagles so far this season at sitting at 5-6, looking at a pretty easy schedule coming up. So excited to talk Eagles. We're doing a mega show here, a review and a preview all in one. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so we're going to review select week 11 games. We're going to preview select week 12 games. We're not going to get the full slate in. It is Thanksgiving week. I'm going to be traveling, and as much as Mark wants to, he told me he's just not talented enough to solo this show. So it said the show just dies if I'm not here. And that may or may not be true. He may or may not have said that, but viewers, you and I know. So no, we're going to collapse it all into one this week. We're going to cover the Eagles review and preview, and we'll kind of throw it around to some of the bigger games in the league. So a little bit different show. We'll be back to our twice a week format next week. And so let's dive right into it. With the Eagles winning their first home game of the year, beating the Saints 40-29. Mark, where do you want to start with this one?
I think you have to start with the two most important things. The two most important things with this Eagles season every week are going to be Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, their development as a potential franchise quarterback and as a potential, head coach to feel good about going into the future. And right now, I think before we get into the Jalen Hurts of it all and, the calculus of what is a franchise quarterback and what can be a franchise quarterback, Nick Sirianni has just wowed me 4 weeks in a row and impressed me and made just about every decision that I would have liked him to have made, and even the mistakes he's made, the small mistakes in the last 4 weeks. I don't know if you got a chance to check out either of his pressers this week from after the game or from the next day, but he came out right after the game and he was like, yeah, I got too conservative. Yeah, I got too conservative on offense, and that's something I got to do a better job with a big lead. So it's good to see him even. Yeah,
I'm a little interested on that comment. He said that they got too conservative. That certainly is something that happens when teams have big leads. However, when you're being so run heavy, and that's what got you the lead to begin with, I'm not entirely sure what he's talking about on that one. I know that's what you say in those situations, but I'm not really sure. I didn't feel like the play calling really changed much. So much as we just didn't execute quite as well, and the defense started to give up some drives.
Yeah, I do think there were a couple third and not third and long, but not third and manageable that they just ran the ball on instead of maybe earlier on in the game they would have tried to roll Jalen out, or they would have tried to get Jalen to throw the ball down the field or run the ball for a first down. That I think that they just ran the ball with I believe it was Jordan Howard one of the times, at least on like 3rd and 10. But yeah, I didn't think that they were being, overtly safe or too conservative really on offense. I thought it was just, the game script of how an NFL game goes most of the time, unless you're certain teams that are really good or certain teams that are really bad. You usually don't see like 45-3 wins like that was on pace to be, or, we were up 27-7 at halftime. So I think that's just kind of how the NFL works. When you're not a dominant team, it's usually pretty hard to dominate a team for 60 minutes. So, and it's hard not to let your foot up off the gas, I think, a little bit. And we lost Davion Taylor during that game on defense, which is something we'll get into. But that could have obviously affected our defense because it was something that kind of changed on the fly, and they had to change personnel and change scheme on the fly with that. So the defense definitely kind of softened up. Maybe that's a little bit of what he's referring to with conservative. Maybe I know when we hear Sirianni talk, we kind of just assume he's talking about the offense a little bit. Maybe he was talking about that though. Maybe that was something he was referring to as well.
Yeah, the defense definitely got more conservative, especially once Darius Slay left the game with the concussion. And I'm assuming it's related mostly to now you've got Zach McPherson in there. And so that's a big step down from Darius Slay. You don't feel as comfortable bringing pressure behind that, particularly when Davion Taylor's out as well, which is not a statement I ever expected to be making in November, that our defense needs Davion Taylor back. But So that's true. That's a good point. Maybe he is referring team as a whole and not just the offense there.
Yeah, and I tweeted it at you. I think whenever Davion Taylor got hurt in that game, could you believe if you would have told us a couple months ago on this podcast that either Davion Taylor or TJ Edwards were pieces that we felt good about and pieces that if they were hurt that we would miss, that we would kind of be nervous about how to replace. And it's funny how things develop. So even in a year where maybe or at a time where maybe we don't feel like we have a ton of young pieces to feel good about and a ton of young pieces to build on. At least those are two small victories, two small developments, and maybe not small, maybe big developments with TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor.
Yeah, and of course TJ Edwards gets the 1-year contract, so he's locked up for next year now as well, which is it's a cheap deal. He's played well down the stretch. He's definitely a guy that you want to keep around for another year at least and see how things go.
Yeah, Howie's season started early with Avante, with Goddard, with Davion Taylor. It's pretty funny. It didn't seem like that was happening across the league either. Like usually when you see those in-season contracts, you're seeing them across the league because there's some deadline or whatever the case may be. Just seems like the Eagles were just like, yeah, we're gonna do this week. Like just like pretty random. I wonder what kind of led to all of those happening all at once.
Yeah. I saw somebody on Twitter say, Dallas, Goddard, and Avonte Maddox from the All or Nothing lived in the house together, best friends, all that. I saw somebody said that it was probably a condition in Goddard's contract that Avonte get an extension too, so they could stay in Philly together.
Yeah, Avonte said he's still picking up the check, Goddard when they're out to eat. And yeah, they both have a show together on Fox PHL The Gambler, the radio station that I work for. In Philadelphia. I forget, of course, now I forget the name of the show. It might just literally be the Dallas Goddard and Avonte Maddox show. They might have the player show. I think it's the player show. I was listening to it the other day. Actually, it's pretty funny. But yeah, it's I guess, did we talk about those contracts on the review show? I don't think we did.
Well, this is the review show. No,
I mean the preview show. Did that happen after the preview show?
I think the Goddard contract happened the day of, and the Avonte contract happened later.
So I don't know if we touched on our opinions on those contracts, but do you want to kick that off before we? I feel like that's a more relevant thing than anything that happened in the game, really.
Yeah, I thought both of the contracts were a little rich. It was. I'll try to pull the numbers up here while you're talking in a minute, but Dallas Goddard's now the number 3 annual value for contract or for tight ends, and this guy, he's never had a 600-yard season. I think it was. Now, I think he's a good player. To me, an elite tight end has to be able to dictate matchups to the defense, and so if you're going to pay a guy at that level, he needs to be a guy that can block linebackers, and he's got to be able to beat corners on routes, because if you can't do both of those things, then you can allow the defense to dictate what you're doing. If you can block really well like Goddard can, but you can't beat cornerbacks on routes, then they can just put linebackers out there and know you're going to run the ball. Things like that. If you can go out there and you can beat those corners, now obviously you can block a corner. It gives you run pass options no matter how the defense chooses to match you. I'm not sure that Goddard – I think Goddard is a good tight end. I think he's a great blocker. I've got no doubt he can beat linebackers on routes. I don't think he's a guy that you can isolate on the backside against a corner and expect him to win. And so, to me, that's not a guy that you pay the 3rd highest annual value for tight ends. Now, I'm glad Goddard's going to be here, and I know the market always resets itself, but it's another one of those things where we're gambling on something we think is true but hasn't been proven to be true yet. And those have sometimes that works for you. Sometimes you get a great deal, and maybe we'll think that was a great deal in 2 years. And sometimes it implodes, and you have to trade that guy for a conditional pick, and you eat a huge dead cap. And that's the situation we found ourselves in with Carson Wentz, a guy who had proven more than Dallas Goddard had. And so I'm glad he's here. I figured they would get a deal done as soon as Ertz was traded. I knew this was going to come. It gave Goddard leverage once Ertz was traded. They should have probably got the deal done earlier. But that's kind of my thoughts. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, And by the way, just before, I think we'll brush by the Avonte news. I didn't think the Avonte one was too rich. That seemed, and it's harder to judge based on corner salaries because he's a slot corner and you're judging him against guys that might not be slot corners. But I think the Avonte Maddox one seemed like around the number I would have guessed. What was it? 3 years, 33 or 30, something like that. I believe for Avonte, which seemed, in the ballpark of what I was expecting. I think Goddard was, I believe, 4 years, 57. And obviously some of that money could be fake, and some of that money isn't guaranteed since it's the NFL. And with Goddard, more specifically, it's certainly not a discount. You certainly didn't get Dallas Goddard for anything that you're going to look on in 2 years and say, oh, thank God we signed that deal. I don't think that that's a scenario, but I also don't think this is a contract that's going to implode on us. Unless he has really bad health issues that he hasn't had so far. I know he's had a couple here and there. But I think that this guy's a guy that's primed to break out. And like I said before, I kind of made the opposite point of this, but there aren't, a multitude of young players on the Eagles to get excited about that we've drafted within the last, 5 to 6 years. So Dallas Goddard, it's almost, and you made a good point with the Ertz and the leverage, and you almost think that we should have probably paid Goddard before we traded Ertz, but he also had leverage not just because of his position. He had leverage because he's Howie's best pick in a long time of any consequence in the first couple of rounds. He had leverage because he's one of the best young players on the team how many players do we know are going to be here in 3 years? It's not more than 5, or it's not more than 7 at least. And Goddard is definitely on that list now, especially after that contract. So I'm happy, like you said, that we kept him around. It's not a salary that I feel great about. But if you were to tell me you either paid the salary or you risk you roll the dice of him going to free agency this offseason or whatever may be the case and him leaving, I guess I'd pay the salary. But yeah, that's kind of, he had us over a barrel with the position scarcity after trading Ertz and with the young player scarcity on this team. I mean, it's a situation where you had to pay him.
Yeah, so it's 4 years, $57 million. That's $14.25 million a year. Puts him behind only George Kittle and Travis Kelce.
And it's not really behind Kelce either. I don't think it's pretty much like neck and neck.
Yeah, they're all just right there.
I think Kittle has an extra year. I believe. I think Kittle's the 5th year. But I was looking at it and I was shocked how similar the Goddard contract was to Kelce. It almost looked like they modeled it after it, which is pretty crazy to think about.
And then Avonte Maddox was 3 years, $22.5 million, which, I thought, what is that? $7.5 million a year. I thought you were looking at I thought free agency, $8 million would probably be his top 6 to 8. So I thought they overpaid for Maddox more than they did for Goddard. But again, you're so cheap at so many of these positions now. You got all that dead because they've got cap room to play with. So I don't hate it. I'm glad they're both here. It's at a higher number than I thought it would have been, but ultimately it probably works out for the best that they're still around.
Yeah, and Goddard played a great game in that game. To take it back to the game, and it's clear, week after week after week that Goddard and Devontae Smith are the only factors in this passing offense. I mean, you look at Jalen Reagor, you look at the other guys that we have. I mean, we did get a J-Jaw sighting in this game.
J-Jaw has more receiving yards in the last 4 weeks than Jalen Reagor does.
That's pretty funny. I think I'm pretty sure Nick Sirianni gave him the game ball and said it was the play of the day or something. I mean, the J-Jaw catch.
It was not inconsequential because that was a third down. You're about to go off the field and give the ball back. And, they rolled out a trick play. They put J-Jaw on the field and they threw him the football. Nobody's seen that before. So it's great play design. Great just saving that one for Sirianni. That was huge.
I don't know if you could look – if you had this off the top of your head, if you could look it up while we're talking. How many targets does he have this year, J-Jaw? I seriously wonder because he's played some snaps. If you pay attention, he's played a couple snaps here and there. I don't have too many memories this year of him being targeted at all. And obviously They threw a lot to start the year and then haven't thrown a lot the last couple weeks. But I think me and my buddies that were watching the game with me, we were curious how many times and I could have easily looked it up, but
he has one target on the year,
and it's that catch. Wow, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Yeah, I couldn't. I had to like clean my glasses when I saw it was J-Jaw. I couldn't believe it. But kind of taking from the game and looking at our draft capital and the cap room that you just talked about, it's becoming more clear to me than ever. And I know people don't want to hear it because we've taken so many wide receivers in the draft, and people don't like this and they want to just focus on quarterback and defense and not draft a receiver or not pay a receiver. They have to pay a second receiver to come be an X receiver, or they have to draft an X receiver to come in here and play with Devontae and to play with Dallas Goddard. If you get one more receiver in here and you maybe even shore up the backfield, bring in a running back in the draft or pay a running back a little bit, try to find a bargain, a bargain basement guy in free agency. This is an offense that could be really good regardless of what you think about Jalen Hurts, because Devontae keeps improving, Dallas Goddard keeps improving, and this offense keeps finding their identity. If you add weapons in the passing attack to an offense that is clearly just killing it on the ground, I believe they're second in rush DVOA now, after being third going into last week. Maybe Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be incredible. Maybe Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be a great quarterback to work in this type of offense. So, I'm kind of getting excited about the future a little bit with some of these young guys on offense. But the main takeaway from the game, if we're going to stick with the offense, should be the big boys 8. The O-line. We came into the year saying that we didn't think this team could be that bad because of how good we were on the trenches, on the offensive line, and on the defensive line. And the defensive line hasn't really lived up to those expectations whatsoever. That offensive line absolutely has, especially in these last couple of weeks, and especially since we found our identity running the football. Some of those blocks by Mailata, the fight that Mailata started, some of those blocks by Kelsey, some of those blocks by Lane. Those guys looked like 3 All-Pros out there on the offensive line. So that was probably, the main takeaway from the game, because every play, it just felt like they were just pushing dudes off the line, no matter if it was a pass or a rush.
Yeah, and you got even Driscoll, who was a tackle, who's now playing guard, and he's playing guard at I think PFF graded him like the number 3 offensive guard. Just give Jeff Stoutland a lifetime contract. He's incredible at what he does. Best offensive line coach in the NFL, maybe the best positional coach, period. What he's been able to do with those guys. And yeah, you're right. It's clear the Eagles have to do something at receiver next year. It doesn't mean you got to spend a first-round pick on one. You could go get a guy in free agency, but they desperately need that big-bodied X receiver that can play on the outside, because they don't have that right now. The only guy that they have that can run good routes and get off press coverage is Devonta Smith, and you don't want Devonta Smith as your X receiver. You want him in the slot. You want him, at the Z. You want Quez Watkins in those 2 spots too. The only 2 guys you have, neither one of them is that big body to play outside. The Eagles need that. And I think it would add a lot to this team, even if it's not a first-round pick, even if it's just a decent free agent guy, it would add a lot to this offense. We talk a lot right now about these half-field reads and, Hurts is only thrown to one side of the field. Well, the Eagles don't have a receiver that they can put on the backside of a formation to run a slant or a dig that you can bounce to if you don't like the look you're getting on your front side concept. They don't have that. And it'd be huge for the offense if they could add that in the offseason.
Yeah, I think it has to be a focus. And yeah, it doesn't have to be a first-round pick. Maybe it can be a second, third-round pick. Maybe it can be something that's addressed in free agency. It's just not going to work to continue to try to trot Rager and Quez. And I like Quez, but to try to trot Rager and J-Jaw out there. But I heard I forget I think it might have been Baldy or someone else that covers O-line play that were raving about Dickerson too.
Dickerson graded out really well for the game.
So that's five guys that we just mentioned. We just mentioned the whole offense. It's the whole team, as Jason Kelsey would say. But the offensive line was it was stellar in that game, and that's probably the most important part of this offense and part of what this offense has become, and what Sirianni has been able to do calling plays, and what Jalen Hurts has been able to do, and what this backfield has been able to do. So. I guess we should shift it over to just like kind of Jalen Hurts discussion.
Let me ask you this first. So if you're going to build around Jalen Hurts, you're going to build this rushing attack. What is your offensive line going to look like next year? Because I'm assuming Jason Kelsey retires. He's toyed with it for years. And at this point, I'm just assuming Brandon Brooks will never play more than 4 or 5 games in a season again. So you've got Mailata and Lane, those guys you feel good about. You've got Dickerson and Seumalo, who both have played left guard. Dickerson played some center in college. Seumalo was originally intended to be the center. You got Driscoll, who's in the mix here. Do you prioritize going and getting a center so you can leave Dickerson at guard? I'm curious, how would you handle that process towards building your O-line next year?
I think you probably handle it by asking Jeff Stoutland his opinion and just letting him decide. But my guess would be Dickerson's a center, just because it seems like it might be a little easier to go find a guard than it would be to bring a center in and someone who hasn't worked with Jalen before. And you have to imagine that Dickerson and Jalen, just moving him over to center would be more helpful than bringing in a new set. Maybe that's an incorrect assumption from the outside looking in, but I think it probably would be easier to target a guard in the draft or to target a guard in free agency than specifically a center that you could bring in and play right away. So I would guess Dickerson at center and Seumalo at guard, and like you said, the tackles are locked up. But we've counted Jason Kelsey retired before. I thought he was retiring after last year, so who knows? Maybe if we have like a nice end of the season, we go 9-8, 10-7, and lose in the playoffs. Maybe that makes Kelsey want to be a part of this team again next year. Who knows with that guy?
I sure hope so. I have more fun watching him play than any other offensive lineman, except maybe Jordan Mailata is giving him a run for his money now. That one-handed pancake of Cameron Jordan was just amazing.
I tweeted it out, and it's funny. Like some tweets that you send out during the game that you think are funny, they don't get any likes or anything like that. And then some tweets you send out, it's like I didn't think that that was very clever at all, and it gets a whole ton of likes. But I tweeted out that Jordan Mailata thinks football is rugby, and I don't want anyone telling him otherwise. Just let him keep thinking that he's playing rugby out there and messing people up. It's working out well for him.
I tweeted that little clip, and I said that Jordan Mailata likes to serve his pancakes with one hand, and I put the pancake emoji, and that one did kind of blow up.
That's funny.
Then down in the comments, I ended up having 2 guys from Australia talking about different toppings they put on their pancakes, and I thought that was really funny. But
yeah, Jordan Mailata had, more highlights in a game than I've seen an offensive tackle had in a long time. Kelsey had that one highlight where he was the swing blocker, and he took out a guy that wasn't even his assignment basically on the play just because he was in his way. So that's hilarious to see. But Miles Sanders, we haven't gotten into the backfield. We rushed for a ton of yards in this game. Jalen Hurts 3 rushing touchdowns, which is outrageous. But Miles Sanders almost, I was ready to buy him a first class ticket out of town, for Monday. So it's pretty crazy that he was able to kind of save, his game a little bit. He ended up having a good game, and Sirianni praised him for it. But, Sirianni said after you fumble like that, you got to preach dog mentality. I don't know how you could preach dog mentality to Miles Sanders after that fumble. He literally tried to make it a game, like 14-0 in your own 5, and you fumble that ball. And then I think it was the next possession or 2 possessions later, and we give it to him again within our own 20, and he shuffles the ball around and almost fumbles again. I almost lost my mind the second time when he did that.
Oh, and then running out of bounds with 4 minutes left too.
He's
no situational awareness.
He's addicted to running out of bounds.
Yeah. But yeah, we rushed for 242 yards on the day against the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. They were number 4 the year before that, number 4 the year before that, number 2 the year before that. So this is a perennial top run defense, and they had no answers for the Eagles' ground attack. And so much of that comes down to, I mean, obviously the offensive line, but so much of it comes down to Jalen Hurts too. Having that quarterback, they have to account for you in the run game. And so you're leaving these defensive ends unblocked, and you're climbing to a second level, and the defensive end can't do anything. You can't go be a part of the play because, is Hurts keeping the ball? And then even when Hurts keeps the ball on the game-winning touchdown and the defensive end plays it right, he just breaks his ankles anyways. And so it's just one of those things that no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong. There's so many things to account for. The way that they're designing this running game, you can't just run the ball 50 times against the Saints and get away with it. The way they're designing that running game is truly a masterpiece. And I don't know why it took us so long to get there, but it's there now. Bill Belichick always said for years that you figure out what your team is in September and October, and you want to be playing your best football in November. And that's where the Eagles are right now. On both sides of the ball, they seem to be figuring it out. Obviously, it's not against the best competition all the time, but this was a legitimately good run defense, and the Eagles just put one over on them.
Yeah, I believe I saw the stat. They had only given up 72 yards per game coming into that game, and I think it was early on in the second quarter that we had 72 yards on the ground. So that was good to see. And yeah, that was exactly what I was preaching all offseason, if you remember. I even talked about it for fantasy purposes too. I thought Miles Sanders was going to have a big year this year. Just strictly due to what the impact that mobile quarterbacks have on the rushing game. And you just laid it out from an X's and O's standpoint way better than I could. But when you have a quarterback that can, like you said, break your ankles in the way that Jalen Hurts can, it forces the defense to play your rushing attack a different way than they would if it was Kirk Cousins or if it was Joe Flacco or whoever, whatever statue quarterback you want to use. It's different. And maybe Dalvin Cook and people like that rush with quarterbacks like that should get more credit. But I think that the rushing identity is something that we should have obviously thought of in week one. When Jalen Hurts is your quarterback, you should be designing your scheme around Jalen Hurts and what he can do well and what your offense is going to be able to do around him. But like I said, I think last week, you can either kill him for not figuring that out earlier, or you can praise them for, figuring out, that was the right way to go. Like you said, the Belichick quote. But yeah, I think it's, what's your Jalen Hurts quarterback day one next year percentage chance? I put that horribly. But what's the percentage chance that Jalen Hurts is the quarterback on day one next year?
So a month ago, I said it was like 10 to 15%. I think it's up to I'll say 60%. There's still he's making progress in the biggest area I wanted to see him make progress, and that was climbing pockets, moving in the pocket, and not just breaking the pocket all the time. There's still progression I want to see going through reads, accuracy downfield, but the biggest thing I wanted him to do was to start climbing in pockets, and I've seen him start to do that. Now, he's not had to do a ton the last few weeks through the air, and that's okay. But I want to see him sustain this. I want to see, teams aren't going to just adjust to it and shut him down, figure this out. But as long as he continues to trend in this direction, I want to build around him and see what we can do next year. Now, if we regress to where we were a month ago, that obviously changes the equation. But I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about – and I don't think Jalen Hurts is ever going to be a top 5 NFL quarterback. But you can still get into that top 10 range. You can still make some playoff runs. You can get hot and win a Super Bowl without that. If he continues to play the way that he's played the last few weeks, I don't think he's that guy where everything has to be perfect to go win. I think he's helping you. You're not winning with him. You're still winning because of this guy. And that's kind of that break-even point for me. So I like what I've seen. There's still he missed some throws, or not throws so much. He missed some reads that were open in the game. That shot that he threw, he tried to throw the whole shot against cover 2 to Devonta Smith and got pushed out of bounds. Of course, Smith hangs on to it, but he only gets 1 foot down. That ball should have come out quicker and with more velocity, and he can complete that. That's a throw he needs to be able to make. But I do like that he recognized that throw. He read it, and yeah, it came out at hitch late and a little slow, but that's progression, and it's something that we hadn't really seen before.
So we've been wanting to do this QB tiers show for a couple of weeks now. We have to do it next week when it calms down. We have 2 shows, and we're definitely going to do that. But real quick, a question from that: would the Indianapolis Colts be better right now if they had Jalen Hurts instead of Carson Wentz, and would the Eagles be better if they had Carson Wentz instead of Jalen Hurts?
Both teams would be better with Jalen Hurts.
Wow.
Because, and here's why, the passing weapons aren't there for the Eagles. Now, you could win with the running game still with Carson Wentz, but I do think it becomes harder when you don't have that mobility at the quarterback position. But look at what Jonathan Taylor's doing right now, and we're going to get to him in a minute. Now imagine if Jalen Hurts was a threat to run out of that backfield too. And so I think both teams, the biggest thing Jalen Hurts does is he does not turn over the football. He's got like one interception. I mean, he doesn't turn over the football. And so Carson Wentz has thrown more interceptions with his left hand this year, I think, than Jalen Hurts has thrown with his right hand. And he just plays smarter. And he may not make some of the wow throws that Carson Wentz is capable of making, but I would rather take that steady presence on my team than the guy who will have this great moment and then throw a left-handed shovel pass that gets intercepted, the next play.
Yeah, I agree. I would take Hurts as well. And before we move on to the rest of the NFL, I've heard a lot of people when talking about what we were just talking about with Hurts and can he be the guy for next year and kind of how you have to build around him, mention the Ravens as this is what you have to do. You have to build like you're the Ravens. You have to build your rushing identity like you're Baltimore and like Jalen Hurts is Lamar Jackson. And that's not necessarily how I view it. And people aren't going to necessarily love this comparison. I think you have to continue building this team like the 49ers around kind of how they built it around Jimmy G. And I understand that it's different because Jimmy G is not a mobile quarterback, but the 49ers identity was running the ball. They just did it a different way, and they did it with a good scheme, especially with zone blocking on the offensive line. But that's like the Shanahan way, and I'm not saying we have to copy Shanahan and do all that, but what they did was they drafted well on defense, and that's what we have the opportunity to do next year. If you build up that defense and you continue cultivating this identity on offense of a rushing team, and you keep that up going into next year with Jalen Hurts and with, we talked about the revamped offensive line that we'll probably have for next year. If you can continue that identity on offense and you add some pieces on defense, then you're really, really in business. Because right now, if you put what I assume would be 2 to 3 defensive first-round picks and what we hope to be starters right away on this defense right now, I think we'd feel differently about our chances in the division, let alone the playoffs. So I think that, I feel pretty good about potentially being able, I don't know about a Super Bowl contender, I don't know about a contender, but to build a real playoff roster around Jalen Hurts and around Smith and Goddard and some of these pieces on defense. And, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Howie Roseman's the best GM ever and tell you how great Howie Roseman is. I think I'm kind of in the middle on Howie. I don't think that he's as much of a train wreck as some people would have you think, but I also think some people that try to praise Howie and the Howie defenders out there are like delusional as they come. But you'd have to say this team being 5-6 with Jalen Hurts looking like he could be the guy with 3 first-round picks next year, Howie's got to be feeling pretty good right now, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Now, I will never give him credit for the Hurts thing because it was a terrible process. You don't go pay a guy what they paid Carson Wentz and then draft a second-round guy the next year. Terrible process. Sometimes it leads to good results, but it's terrible process. But yeah, and you got an opportunity to make a big splash in the draft. Yeah, right now, the ESPN Football Power Index says that the Eagles have a 40% chance of making the playoffs this year. Mm-hmm. And so you've got a chance to finish this year with some momentum. Hopefully you're not having scheme change again. Hopefully you're retaining both Gannon and Sirianni because they've earned that throughout the rest of the season. And you could be in a place next year where you've infused a lot of youth that this team desperately needs. And to your point about people saying to build like the Ravens, don't build like the Ravens, because the Ravens never gave Lamar Jackson weapons to throw the football to. Any game the Ravens win is because Lamar Jackson puts them on his back and drags them to the end zone. Don't make the Ravens your model. They've done a terrible job of building around an elite quarterback.
Agreed wholeheartedly on that point. So I think we should probably move on to the rest of the NFL before we get bogged down and just talk Eagles the whole time. I had another question that I had in my head. It popped out, but if I think of it, I'll throw it out there. But let's move on to the rest of the league.
All right, let's do it. We don't want to keep you guys here too long. So we're going to throw around to a few select games. Mark picked out some games that he wanted to talk about, and so we're going to hit on some of those. We are not going to hit on them all. If you're not an Eagles fan and we don't hit your team, we'll get back to it next week. So
leave your but if you have it in the comments, leave it in there and I'll touch it.
Yeah, for sure. If you're watching here live, be sure and drop comments for us. We'll give you quick takes, that sort of thing. But love to interact with you guys as we go. So the Colts went to Buffalo to play the Bills, and I said on the preview show that the Colts had not beaten a team with a winning record. Buffalo had played the combination of the easiest schedule all season, and so we would find out something about these teams after this game. And now we definitely know something about one of these teams, and that is that Buffalo – is Buffalo a paper tiger? I think they are. I do not think this is that good of a football team. And after watching this game, I'm just telling you right now, if Jonathan Taylor isn't in the MVP race, then just make it a quarterback award, because this guy has 185 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns on the day. I gave him some MVP love a week ago. I don't think he'll win it because it is just a QB award, and it's a facade that we say it's the most valuable player. It should just be the most valuable quarterback.
Yeah, I scoffed at it last week, and I'm not scoffing at it anymore, but I still don't think it's going to happen, just because the same reason I said last week with how good Derrick Henry's numbers were last year, and he didn't get a single MVP vote. So I think it'll be more of the same. I think you're right. It is the most valuable quarterback league. And I also think you're right that Buffalo's fake. Buffalo's not a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion, and even in a weak AFC. I just don't think Buffalo is what we thought they were going to be coming into the year. And it's because of the same reasons that, in my opinion, they didn't break through last year, which is they don't have that second weapon outside of Stephon Diggs in their passing game, and they don't have a good running game. Singletary and Moss just aren't going to happen. Emmanuel Sanders, John Brown, whoever you make your second receiver without actually drafting or signing someone to address it, that's what's going to happen. They're too dependent on Josh Allen just, dragging them to wins and Stephon Diggs dragging them to wins. I just don't think that their defense is good enough to kind of bail out their offense when that's not what they're supposed to be. This Bills offense, you pay Josh Allen what you pay him. You're supposed to be one of the most dynamic offenses in football. You retain Brian Daboll, an offensive coordinator who everyone wanted to hire to be head coach last year. And all of a sudden, his job might be in jeopardy. So I'm really concerned about Buffalo. And I said that last week, and I think some people were surprised that I was concerned about Buffalo. And that was the reason I was on Indy last week. But, I think Indy's pretty good. I think Indy, obviously Jonathan Taylor's really good. I think, Phillip Rivers went 11-5 last year. The corpse of Phillip Rivers went 11-5 with this roster. So for Carson Wentz to be 6-5, maybe we should be asking questions that, they should be better. But I think this Colts team is going to be a team that competes to make the wild card and competes to make the playoffs. And, maybe the Bills are a wild card team. Maybe they're a team that has given up their division spot to the Patriots. And maybe they're a team that might have to fight to make the wild card. It might not just be handed to them like we thought a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the Patriots are winning that division. There's no doubt in my mind. Okay, let's move on to Cleveland and Detroit. Cleveland limps out of this game with a 13-10 victory. Baker Mayfield, again, another poor game. He's going to continue to play injured. He's going to continue to play poorly. To me, Cleveland's done too. I just don't see a path forward for Cleveland to get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm in the same path. They have a really tough schedule too. So it would be really impressive if they were able to turn it around and make the playoffs. But the reason I wanted to talk about this game is just it's due to Baker Mayfield. I'm not sure if you saw his wife, or I believe it was an Instagram story about how the rest of the team should be tough like Baker, and how no one should criticize Baker because he's out there playing hurt and giving it his all, and maybe all the other players should give it their all. It's like, oh my God, if you're Baker, you gotta be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to make 52 other people on my own team that just like defended me in a situation against Odell like hate me now? And then he comes out and it's not enough to just alienate your own teammates. He comes out and alienates this fan base. They ask him, Baker, how did you feel about the fans booing you after you almost gave up the lead to the Lions? And he goes, yeah, well, those are the same fans that aren't being quiet while we're on offense, and they're making it harder on us to operate. And it's like,
I saw that.
What are you doing, dude? Like, you're trying to win this fan base over so you can get a big contract and get paid, and you're like yelling at them. I did not understand the Baker Mayfield PR team this week.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get what they cooked up.
Yeah, I was listening to I can't remember. It might have been Steven Ruiz. I can't remember now, but they were talking about quarterback. I think it was Ruiz. They were talking about quarterbacks in the draft, and they were talking about how people are saying Sam Howell, he's going to be a first-round pick, all this stuff. And he said, Sam Howell is Baker Mayfield, but not as good. He's like, he's Baker Mayfield if he wasn't even as good. And I was like, yeah, that's not a glowing endorsement. But anyways, yeah, strange. And, this is going to go south on Cleveland. I think it's going to go south on Baker pretty quickly.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I would have told you coming into the year that there's an 80-90% chance Baker got paid and Baker got that second contract. I don't know. I can't see them paying him right now. Maybe it's a franchise tag. I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right, let's roll on. Green Bay at Minnesota. Minnesota emerges victorious 34-31. Here's a fun stat for you. Kirk Cousins in this game passed Aaron Rodgers. He now has 25 games with 300-plus yards and 3 touchdowns. He's only 1 game behind Dan Marino for first place all time for 300-yard game, 3 touchdowns, which to me, that just tells you that Kirk Cousins stats are why you have to watch games, because Kirk Cousins breaks every advanced stat, every analytical metric there is. Like, he's the opposite. Some of these guys, you watch them and you're like, yeah, they're pretty good. And then you go look at the advanced stats and it's like, well, not really. Kirk Cousins is the opposite. The analytics, the box scores will tell you he is a good quarterback. He's just not. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. The Kirk Cousins, he breaks all those analytics. Justin Jefferson, meanwhile, in this game just goes off. 169 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. He might be the best receiver in the NFL right now. It's just crazy to see what he's doing.
Yeah, it might be him or Jamar Chase, him or his teammate from LSU. It's pretty crazy how good those guys are. But, yeah, the Vikings' weapons and their offense is just like – it's insane to think about how much Kirk Cousins has to play with Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. It's wild. Imagine if they had a good quarterback, then they'd really be in business, and their quarterback would really be putting up numbers. And if Kirk Cousins wasn't Kirk Cousins, he'd be an MVP candidate. That's like the funny part about this. If you just like look at the numbers, but everyone has like just seen it long enough now that it's like, it's Kirk Cousins. Like, it's just pretty funny that you can push that to the side, but we'll get to it more in the previews. Actually, I put this game on the list, but I actually have more to say in the previews. But this is actually one of those games where it's like Green Bay might have lost, but if you watched it, it wasn't one of those games where it's like, oh, I'm worried about Green Bay. I still think Green Bay is like a top 3 team in the league and a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion.
All right, Washington football team at Carolina. They win 27-21. Washington won despite missing their 2 top tight ends, both starting defensive ends, and they were using their 3rd center for the year. Washington's starting to surge a little bit. They beat the Bucs. They beat the Panthers. They have Montez Sweat coming back soon. Maybe this is a team that maybe they can start to string some wins together here. For the Panthers, Cam did his part in this game. Their defense really let them down, giving up 27 points to Washington. What do you have on this one?
This was a fun one, and we talked about it going in. We expected it to be fun, and it ended up being lived up to it. And Taylor Heinicke played great again, very efficient again. And this actually looked like the Washington football team that was projected to win the division. This looked like the Washington football team we were expecting coming into the year with a good defense, even though they were missing Young, and they ran the ball really well. Not with just Gibson, not with just McKissick, not with just Heineke, but with all three. All three of them ran the ball well, and it wasn't just like the Tampa game where it was basically just a couple turnovers and Taylor Heineke led long drives. They played well in every aspect of this game, and Carolina played really well too. It was actually a game that kind of made me feel better about both of these teams right now. And Cam Newton definitely gives Carolina something that they haven't had the rest of the year. I thought that was the best, game of quarterback that a Carolina Panther has played this season. And I know Sam Darnold had some good games earlier on this season, but I thought Cam played really well, especially to start this game. And I think that Joe Brady called a good game, getting them, ready on a short week with Cam to play pretty well. So, yeah, their defense did let them down. I don't know if that's just Heineke rising to the occasion again or the Panthers' defense not being as good as we thought coming into that game. But, that was a game that, I walk away thinking, maybe both of these teams are wild card, threats to the Eagles and to the Vikings and the 49ers, whoever you want to say is going to take that wild card.
Yeah, the NFC wildcard is going to be interesting to watch. One team that is not going to be in contention for the wild card is the Seattle Seahawks. They fall 23-12 to the Cardinals and Colt McCoy. So the Cardinals survive Kyler Murray's ankle injury with a 2-1 record. Now they hit their bye. They've got 2 weeks to get healthy. Zach Ertz had 8 receptions for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cardinals became the 4th team in NFL history to win 6 straight road games by double digits.
Wow. That's pretty wild. Colt McCoy is also the only quarterback to have won in Seattle 2 times in the last 23 months.
Including Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy number. I might have botched that. It might have been like a certain amount of months that I didn't say correctly, but it's pretty crazy that he's won there. I believe he's 3-0 there in the last 4 years on 3 different teams.
Maybe the Seahawks should sign him when Russell Wilson leaves this offseason, because Russ is leaving. Like, he wanted out after last year. Now their offense is totally broken. Like, this team is done. And Russell Wilson's gone. He's out after this year. There's no way he comes back.
Is Pete Carroll out too?
He should. They should fire Pete Carroll and ask Russ, who do you want to coach this team? But, I mean, you don't let the Hall of Fame quarterback walk to keep a coach that's held the quarterback back his entire time there. I've never understood the Pete Carroll love. Like, Pete Carroll he hurts this. He actively hurts this team, and he always has. And
I disagree with that. I think he built a good team there for a while. At the beginning of the Russ era, especially. He's lost it though.
Sure, it's tremendously difficult to be a good defensive coach when you have the Legion of Boom at your disposal.
He didn't walk in with the Legion of Boom. he was, and he's part of the drafting process too. So I do think Pete Carroll was a big part. And by the way, I'm a Notre Dame fan. Pete Carroll is a USC coach forever in my eyes. So I hate Pete Carroll. I think he should absolutely be fired. Let Russ cook. I thought he should be fired for 3 to 4 years, but I do think he's I do think he was a great coach in early on in that Legion of Boom era. And even I used to think going in, he had some 7 and 9 years pre-Russ with like Charlie Whitehurst and those quarterbacks that actually were, I remember at the time thinking they were very impressive. But yeah, do you think there's any chance this turns into like a Peterson Wentz thing where both parties end up out and Seattle just like starts over? Like, I think the move for Pete Carroll should be, I'm going to go coach USC again. Like, I've always thought that made the most sense.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, Seattle, if you lose Russell Wilson, you're rebuilding. You don't want to rebuild with Pete Carroll. So regardless, I think you should get rid of Pete Carroll unless Russell Wilson's like, yeah, I'll come back and play with him again. But I think they both probably gone after this year.
Agreed.
All right, and then the final game we're going to cover in our review portion of the show, unless somebody chimes in here in the comments, is Dallas at Kansas City. Kansas City walks away with a 19-9 win. Dallas in this game played without 3 top 5 paid players at their position in Tyron Smith, Amari Cooper, and DeMarcus Lawrence. And additionally, they could be missing CeeDee Lamb on Thanksgiving if he doesn't clear concussion protocol. So the Cowboys very banged up. The Chiefs, they've notched another W, and they're 7-4 now and sitting in sole possession of first place in their division.
Yeah, it's one of these weird games where you actually walk away maybe feeling better about the team that loses the game, because I thought Dallas' defense played great. This was definitely one of those games where it's like, wow, maybe the Dallas defense is definitely legit, and I think a lot of people have accepted that, and I've kind of struggled to accept that, but that game was definitely the most impressed I've been with Dallas' defense all year, and I'm not going to freak out about Dallas' offense. The Cowboys' offense is going to be very good. I don't care what happens as long as they're healthy. They're going to be very good. Now, you could say maybe there should be some concerns about the O-line. Dak Prescott looked like Sack Prescott out there. Sorry for the dad joke, but they were not giving Dak any time, and he was getting kind of tortured back there. So maybe that's a concern. I think when you have Cooper and Lamb out there, it's probably less of a concern, just because you're always going to have someone open. And Zeke didn't have a good game in this game either. They didn't run the ball well with Pollard or Zeke. So, it was just one of those games where I don't think the Cowboys got anything going on offense, and I think a big part of it was health, and they're going to be fine. I don't think the Cowboys are a Super Bowl contender, but I saw a lot of, the Cowboys are fake, and the Cowboys aren't Super Bowl contenders. And it's kind of like, the same people who thought they were watched that game and thought they weren't. It makes me I honestly felt the opposite. I feel better about them after that game. But Kansas City, I'm not going to kill Kansas City. They won the game. They did what you're supposed to do in football. The object of the game is to win. And I believe they're now on a 4-game winning streak to get to 7-4. So they're going to win that division, and they're absolutely in the hunt to make the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be KC or New England representing the AFC.
Yeah, and their defense, their defense is looking a lot better, which the bar was the worst defense in the NFL. So we always, they just need an average defense, and they're trending that direction. So got to feel good about Kansas City.
I believe I saw the stat. They're averaging somewhere between 14 and 15 points, or their defense is only giving up 14 to 15 points per game over the last 6 weeks. So it really has shored up, and like we say, all they have to do is be average or be even like a smidge below average. But if you look at those numbers over the last 6 weeks, and you could poo-poo it with some of the opponents and stats that they've given up against bad teams, but that's top 5, top 10 defense stuff right there. And if the Chiefs have a top 10 defense, they're winning the Super Bowl, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, going back to week 5, going back to week 6, they've given up 13, 27, 17, 7, 14, and 9.
Yeah.
So they've only given up over 20 once.
Yeah, it's been impressive.
All right, so let's throw it over to week 12 preview. Again, we're not going to hit on every game, not going to go super in-depth because truncated week here, but we'll start with the Eagles' trip to the Meadowlands to take on the Giants. A little bit of injury news. Not the most updated reports, obviously, to the actual game because we're recording on Tuesday. But Davion Taylor out with a knee injury, expected to go to short-term IR. Jordan Howard is also out with a knee injury, expected to miss the game, but not headed to IR. And then Darius Slay is in concussion protocol. For the Giants, they've got a plethora of injuries. They've got Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan, Blake Martinez, all key defensive players that are out. And so, it's a depleted Giants defense against, an Eagles rushing attack that may be missing Jordan Howard, but everybody else should be good. Darius Slay and Davion Taylor are obviously the big concerns for this defense.
Yeah, it's hard to. Davion Taylor's definitely not playing. It seems based on, or he was put on IR, right? You said.
Yeah, I don't think they've officially made the move, but they indicated he's going to go to short-term IR.
Yeah, so obviously we'll be missing Davion Taylor, which does seem to be like that could be a huge problem. I'm not sure on Slay, obviously in concussion protocol. So, big play Slay, a guy that I have definitely killed before and definitely slandered before, has been incredible. I forget the stat, but it's something about how he scored more touchdowns than the Lions receivers this season, just in the last certain amount of weeks.
He scored more touchdowns than Jalen Reagor has in his career.
Jesus, yeah, the Jalen Reagor stats. You could go on all day with those, but definitely.
Speaking of Jalen Reagor stats, who had a better receiving game last Sunday than Jalen Reagor?
Both of us, right?
I was going to say Andrew Thomas, the Giants' offensive tackle, caught a touchdown pass, but
did Rager end up with negative yards? Am I wrong?
Yeah, 1 for -1.
Yeah. So we both technically had a better receiving day than Jalen Rager. We didn't lose any yards, but it's it's hard to quantify how terrible the pick that was. But I don't have a lot to say about this game matchup wise yet, because I haven't dove too far deep into Eagles Giants. Obviously, the Giants played last night and looked really bad against Tampa Bay. This is not a very analytical mindset that I'm approaching this game with, but vibes are way too good for us right now, and vibes are way too bad for the Giants right now. It just feels like we're getting a punch to the gut this weekend. I don't know. Maybe that's just the pessimist in me. It feels like everyone's way too in on the Eagles right now. Everyone's way too in on Jalen Hurts. Everyone's way too in on Sirianni. The Giants fired Jason Garrett. I don't know. Maybe they actually draw up plays that make sense. But yeah, I'm a little bit nervous that the Giants come out with their heads on fire, way more motivated than we do. We read our press clippings a little bit. And come out flat and lose an ugly game in New York City. I wish this game was in Philly. Obviously, we get them in a couple weeks in Philly, but I don't know why, but I'm worried about this game, and I think the Giants stink. I think Daniel Jones stinks. I think Joe Judge is an idiot. I don't have too many actual football reasons to say this is why I'm nervous, but I'm nervous.
Yeah, I mean, it was Monday night was a prime letdown spot for the Giants against Tampa Bay before they play their Super Bowl against the Eagles this week to try to get revenge on us keeping their 6-win team out of the playoffs last year. So, they're going to be hunting for revenge here. Joe Judge is going to be talking about the integrity of the game in the locker room in his pregame speeches and all that trash. Looking at it, analyzing the game, the Giants it's a favorable matchup for the Eagles. The Giants have a bad offensive line, and so the Eagles should be able to exploit that some. They have not figured out how to get Kenny Golladay involved. I mean, Andrew Thomas has more touchdown receptions this year than Kenny Golladay, the guy they went and paid in free agency. So if Darius Slay plays, you could be aggressive against this defense. And really, the thing you'd most be worried about is Daniel Jones hurting you with his legs, which he tends to do against the Eagles. But you flip it over to our side on the offense, the Giants give up 116.5 yards per game on the ground. It's 22nd in the league. This is a team you can run on. It's a team you should be able to be aggressive on. It seems like a good matchup, and yet it's a rivalry game, and the Eagles always seem to play the Giants close. Although, over the last, 10, 12 years, it's been a very one-sided affair. And so I'm taking the Eagles in this game, but nothing would surprise me in a rivalry game. And so I'm always going to feel nervous about these.
I'll take the Giants to win, and I hate to do it. I just feel weird. I feel like it's going to be like a 26-23 game. I don't know. A lot of field goals.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's kick it around to the NFL here. We've got a few games we want to talk about. We're going to start off with the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Mark, what do you got on this one?
I think the Falcons win this game, and I know the Falcons have looked really bad against Dallas and against New England 2 weeks in a row and on primetime games. But the Falcons are still a professional football team, and I'm not sure that the Jaguars are. And I think that we saw that, perfectly. We saw that against San Francisco, where I don't think San Francisco is some fantastic team, and San Francisco came out and just put it on them for 60 minutes, just absolutely blowing them out and never letting them up for air. And I think this will be a game that Atlanta gets up early in, just because I think they'll come in more prepared. Urban Meyer, I feel like people just aren't talking about Urban Meyer anymore. I don't know if that means that he's not going to get fired after this year, or he's not going to leave after this year. But the chatter around Urban Meyer has been just like, maybe it's because he beat Buffalo 9-6, but it's just disappeared.
If Urban Meyer is still the coach next year, Trevor Lawrence should hold out. Hold out the second year of his rookie deal. But yeah, I'll take Atlanta in this one. I'm never picking the Jags because they're just, like you said, I'm not even sure they're barely a professional football team at this point. So I'll take the Falcons in this one. This is not a game that I'm going to be watching. I'll hit the highlights so we can talk about it next week, but this is not one I'm going to be glued to the TV for.
I'll be glued to it for gambling purposes, but besides that, I probably will not be too interested. But yeah, I love the Falcons to win this game.
Yeah. All right, next one is the Panthers at the Dolphins. Cam versus Tua the day after the Iron Bowl. So that's fortuitous by the schedule makers there. Fun little fact. Miami is surging. They've got 3 straight wins, and they're allowing 12 points per game. A couple of weeks ago, when they won their first game of that stretch, I tweeted out their upcoming schedule and said that, that this was never going to be a top 5 pick. It might not even be a top 12 pick. And people were kind of like, oh, you're such a downer, whatever. Well, this is it. It's an easy schedule that they've had. Their defense is playing great. All of that aside, though, I think Carolina wins this game. I thought Cam Newton looked really good in his first full game back with he and Christian McCaffrey. And then, this Miami offense just isn't good. They've really, really struggled. I think Carolina's defense gets back on track. And so I'll take Carolina in this one.
I believe Miami's offensive line is ranked 32nd on PFF so far. And I think it's by like a pretty wide margin. And even in this, win streak for the Dolphins, their offense has scored 17, 22, and 24 points and has not looked good really at any point in any 3 of those games. 2 of those 3 wins are against the Texans and the Jets. I think that this kind of Dolphins resurgence is being a little bit overblown. They did have one nice win against the Ravens, who looked like they just basically didn't show up to that game on Thursday Night Football. But I think this is another game that, another ugly game. I love the Panthers here. I think this is a game where the Panthers are going to win. They're going to get that win for Cam. I think Cam gives another dimension to that offense that they didn't have with Sam Darnold, PJ Walker. Can he make all the NFL throws? Can he make the throws he was able to make in 2015? Can he make the throws that most NFL quarterbacks can make? No, but he can do things that other NFL quarterbacks can't even think about doing, especially on third down and especially on the red zone, and especially with Christian McCaffrey. So I think that this game plan has to just be based around Christian McCaffrey and based around Cam on third down and in the red zone. And I think Joe Brady will be able to do that. And again, I just don't think you have to score too much to beat Miami. I forget the numbers I just said, but 17, 22, 24 points, I think, in the last 3 games. I think Carolina is scoring at least 21 points in this game, and I don't know if Miami is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Carolina takes this one. I liked what I saw from Cam last week. I think they build on it this week, and I think he'll get better as the weeks go on and he gets more used to that system.
Me too.
Okay, next game, we've got the Rams at the Packers. This is a huge game. It's got 1 seed implications in the NFC, and both teams have struggled lately. I mean, the Rams looked awful the 2 weeks leading up to their bye. They had a week to step back. Maybe they get back on track. The Packers, they got on track on offense, but their defense was atrocious against the Vikings last week, and they've got some offensive line injuries as well. So where are you leaning in this one?
I'm going with the Rams, and a big part of it is that last part. You do not want to be dealing with the Rams and Aaron Donald when you have offensive line injuries. Now Von Miller too. So you do not want to be facing the Rams when your offensive line is not fully healthy. And I think this is just, you're not going to get a lot of chances to bet the Rams as an underdog. I think that they've only been an underdog one time this year, and they covered. So I like the Rams here. I think the Rams win. I think they're the better team by very slim margin. And I think that Vegas is telling you a lot when they're telling you that the Rams are a 1-point dog in Green Bay. Because I think most people that you ask would say that maybe Green Bay is the better team, or maybe that these teams are even. Vegas doesn't think so. Vegas would have made the Rams, I believe, a 5-point favorite if this was in LA, if you judge it based on the home field swing. But yeah, you're seeing a stat here that Shane pulled up about Aaron Donald.
So this is double team rate is the bottom, pass rush win rate is the up and down. And so look at Aaron Donald up here. Like, this is just like, it's Aaron Donald's world, and we're all just living in it. Wow. And I started to pull this up earlier to talk about the Eagles, that you got Javon Hargrave right here. He has the 3rd highest pass rush win rate, despite being, having been double teamed at a really high rate. And Fletcher Cox, he's up here what is that, like 8th on pass rush win rate. And so, Fletcher Cox has not been double teamed as often as people like to suggest, but he also has not just been he's not gotten the stats, but he's winning in the trenches more than I would have expected. So I thought that was interesting.
It's funny, and not to get too far derailed talking defensive tackles, but I've heard a lot of praise for Christian Barmore, who you see in the bottom right, kind of, and he's getting double teamed a lot, but not winning a lot of pass rush. Maybe he's more of a run stuffing guy. But I've heard, I know you were a big Barmore guy too, in the draft, and I've heard a lot of people, Patriots guys, and just people in general around the league talking about how big he's been for the Patriots, and I think Belichick has even really put him over in interviews. But I'm not sure if you had anything to add there. Just something curious there.
Yeah, I haven't really. I liked Barmore in the draft. I can't say I've watched Patriots games close enough to really break him down. If he's drawing that much double teams, it's got to be freeing somebody else up. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you're paying a guy like the Eagles are paying Fletcher Cox and you're not winning, which Cox is winning at a higher rate than I actually thought before I looked at that. But I thought that was interesting. I pulled it up to share earlier, and then we were going so long, and I never got to it. But since you mentioned Aaron Donald, I thought I'd throw it up there.
Yeah, Aaron Donald's an absolute beast. He's the best defensive player I've ever seen play the game. And I think more people should say, maybe Ed Reed. That's really tough to compare. I think Aaron Donald's a lot more important than Ed Reed could ever be at his position. So I think Aaron Donald's the most important defensive player I've ever seen. And it's hard for me to ever really pick against the Rams when they have the talent they do on defense with Aaron Donald, with Jalen Ramsey, with Von Miller now. I still think the Rams are winning the Super Bowl. I'm bullish on it, and I feel good about this game specifically because they are coming off of a bye, and I think McVay is still a great coach, and I think McVay is going to have them ready to go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll take the Rams largely. I mean, they're the more talented team, and they're coming off the extra rest. You got to think that McVay is going to figure this out, that Stafford is going to figure this out, and I think they'll do that.
Agreed.
So, okay, Minnesota Vikings at the San Francisco 49ers. The Vikings passing offense is clicking lately. Meanwhile, the 49ers have been a run and defense team. And so, it's going to be an interesting clash of styles in this game.
I think that this is the most important game of the week. I know that the Rams-Packers is a bigger game, and it has one seed implications. I think the winner of this game, Vikings 49ers, makes the playoffs, pretty guaranteed to me, because both of them have pretty easy schedules the rest of the way. The winner is going to put themselves at 6-5, and they're going to have a tiebreaker over the other team. If San Fran makes the playoffs, you can put it in ink. Or if San Fran wins this game, you can put it in ink that they're going to make the playoffs, especially since they have the tiebreaker over us as well. I think that San Fran winning this game would be bad for the Eagles. But regardless, that's not why I'm picking the Vikings here. I'm taking the Vikings because I would take whatever team was the underdog in this game. They're both really good as underdogs and really bad as favorites. And the Vikings are +3 in this game. I'll be on them +3, and I'll be on them money line. The Vikings are actually 5-1 against the spread this year as an underdog, and they're 5-1 against the spread on the road. Vikings have been good on the road. They've been good as an underdog. The 49ers are 1-4 at home so far to start this season. So I think all the trends point you towards the Minnesota Vikings. So just before we move on to another thing, I heard some chatter about, going back to the Baker issue because it ties in Jimmy G here. I heard some chatter that the Browns could look at Jimmy G in the offseason if they didn't want to pay Baker and they were to cut Baker and to let Baker go. If you're the Browns, would you rather franchise tag Baker, or would you rather pay Jimmy G basically on a 1-year deal at the same cost? Who do you think is better, and who gives the Browns a better chance next year?
That's a good question. I think, is Jimmy G a free agent this offseason?
No, I think that, maybe you have to give it like a 4th or a 5th round pick.
Okay. I think I'd franchise Baker.
Yeah.
I think it's close enough that I'd rather keep the guy that's in the system, that has the rapport with his teammates. If you put him in the Kyle Shanahan offense, maybe I'd rather have Jimmy G, but I don't think they've got that level of offensive, QB guru in there in Cleveland. And so I think I'd rather franchise Baker than give up assets for Jimmy G.
Oh.
What about you?
I think I lost my mic, but I think it's still talking.
Okay.
So I would go with Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G's criminally underrated at times, and I think the fact that he made the Super Bowl does kind of say a lot. And I know that that's the Shanahan offense, but I'm just so low on Baker right now. I think Baker just can't be the guy, especially when you have as much talent as Cleveland has. I really think that they're wasting a window with a lot of talent right now with Baker Mayfield. And not that Jimmy G's not going to waste that. I think they should look in other directions other than Jimmy G or Baker. But if it was just pick one or the other, I think I'm going Jimmy G.
Yeah. Wait till they go draft Sam Howell.
That would be hilarious.
I don't know who's going to win this game, but I know it's going to be a one-score game because that's all the Vikings ever play. But I'll take the 49ers in this one. I'll take the more steady defense and run game over the sometimes boom or bust Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I understand that, and I would not be shocked to see the 49ers win this game whatsoever. Would you take Jimmy G or Kirk Cousins?
Jimmy G.
Jimmy G? Oh, wow. Okay.
I'd rather have him. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we know what Kirk Cousins is. He's going to beat bad teams. He's going to lose to good teams. He'll have some good performances, but he's never going to a Super Bowl. It's never going to happen.
I agree.
Jimmy G's been there.
I agree with that.
All right. Let's roll on to Cleveland at Baltimore. Do you know if Lamar's going to be back for this game? I haven't heard anything leading either way. I've just heard he's still out, and nobody knows really.
I think Harbaugh did make a comment saying that he's a lot better than he was. So I guess that would trend towards him playing. But we didn't touch on it in the review. What a huge win that was for the Ravens to get a win without Lamar. And I know that it's the Bears. I'm not saying it's overly impressive or anything. Just for standings purposes and 1-seed purposes and division purposes, that was huge for the Ravens to be 7-3 instead of 6-4. That's a huge difference. And I'm glad they were able to do that for Lamar's sake. Because I think we're together on this podcast in wanting Lamar to prove the haters, as wrong as possible. So getting a win without him puts them in better position once the playoffs come around. So that's good for Lamar and the Ravens. And if Lamar plays, he has owned the Browns. I believe he's 4-1 in his career against the Browns, and he's 3-0 in his last 3 games, winning by an average of over 17 points in those last 3 games. The only close one was the game, the infamous diarrhea game, where Lamar Jackson had to leave to go to the locker room in the middle of the fourth quarter and then came out to I was going to use a bad euphemism, but to beat the Browns after he had to go to the locker room. And that was one of the best, night games of last season. But the other 2 games out of the last 3, the Ravens have just absolutely torched the Browns. And it seems like Harbaugh kind of has Stefanski's number. Lamar kind of has the Browns number in general. And I think that continues on Sunday night. I'll be taking Ravens -3.5 if Lamar's in the lineup.
Yeah, if Lamar's back, I think they cruise. The Browns are reeling. I mean, they almost lost to the Tim Boyle-led Lions. So even if Lamar's not back, I think the Ravens still have a shot. I'm taking the Ravens either way. I think they win with or without Lamar. But if Lamar's back, I think they just put it on the Browns.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. That's all we're going to cover for you guys this week. We'll be back next week with our normal 2-a-week format, the full review, full preview, just a little bit truncated this week for Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving travel. Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't plan this. I never do. But my final thought, it will be about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think it's the best comedy that was released in the last 20 years. Whenever the Seinfeld stopped, I think It's Always Sunny is the best comedy television show that's been released since Seinfeld stopped. And it's basically Seinfeld on crack. So anyone out there that likes Seinfeld, but is a little crazy, It's Always Sunny is the show for you. And they actually just started a podcast, or Glenn Howerton, Rob McElhenney, and Charlie Day. So Charlie Mack and Dennis from It's Always Sunny started a podcast reviewing old episodes. And I think they've done the first 5 episodes from season 1. So for anyone out there that's watched the show a million times like me, it's a fun, listen about episodes you've seen 100 times, and you hear behind the scenes stories and inappropriate, anecdotes about it. And then for the people out there who are just watching the show for the first time, it's a nice companion piece to watch as you go along for the first time. So go check that out. Free plug.
All right. For my final thought, we talked about quarterback ratings. It's time for Thanksgiving food tier ratings. So in the spirit of the holiday, we've got the S tier is the stuffing, the dressing, whichever one you want to call it. Turkey does not make or make Thanksgiving. It is the dressing. And then following closely behind it is the pecan pie. And honestly, from where I'm sitting, nothing else matters. It's Thanksgiving. If I get pecan pie and dressing, that's all that matters. Where are you at on Thanksgiving food? What's your favorite?
You would hate my plate so much, and so would everybody. I'm a weirdo when it comes to food. I'm just not a huge eater, which is gonna sound crazy, but I'm a big. I'll get some turkey, some mashed potatoes, some gravy on there, some corn, some bread. Nothing crazy. I don't go to the stuffing. I'll do cranberry sauce. I'll do cranberry sauce on Thanksgiving, which is not something I'll do any other day, but I'll take one slice of it and eat it. But I'm a turkey guy. I know. I feel like it's in vogue nowadays. On Thanksgiving, you just kind of you disrespected turkey, and that's fine. Turkey's here to get disrespected. They get shot. They get killed for us to feast on them on Thanksgiving, and I'm fine with it because I think it tastes great. I love turkey. I eat turkey on sandwiches all year long, so I'm all excited when turkey comes around on Thanksgiving. And I think that. The MVP of Thanksgiving, when it really comes down to, it's gravy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to have gravy to go with the dressing. It goes with the turkey. It goes with everything but the pecan pie. So, I'm with you. Turkey is a real toss-up because turkey dries out so easily, and I'm real finicky. I love to smoke meats, things like that. I'm with Dibes on that, and so I'm real finicky about the meat because it's what I like to cook. And so turkey can dry out really easily, and so many people overcook the turkey. And so turkey's not generally my favorite that I look forward to at Thanksgiving unless I made it, because you just never know. But hopefully I get a good turkey this year. But I know I'll have good dressing and pecan pie, which is what's really important.
I'm looking forward to pumpkin pie already.
All right. That's going to wrap it up today. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 27 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at @halfandhalf_TPL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. So happy Thanksgiving from me, from Mark, and from the Painted Lines. We'll see you guys next time.